Hello, YouTube. What I want to present to you today is information collected and compiled by the late Colonel Genrikh Kolchin in Russia. He was a retired colonel and a deputy chairman of the Commission on Anomalous Phenomena of the Geographical Society of the USSR, professionally engaged in research on the UFO phenomenon. His books are based on the materials that the author presented at the meetings of the Commission on Anomalous Phenomena of the Geographical Society. He had delivered numerous lectures in the Central Lecture Hall of the Leningrad branch of the Society, Knowledge, Znания in Russian, in higher educational institutions and organizations of various departments, including the Ministry of Defense and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Colonel was well connected and he had served his country abroad as well on numerous missions. He was very well versed in the knowledge of UFO phenomenon in the USSR and abroad. And I think this is a good introduction to you, especially about aspects that are also being considered to be very important today. As you can see, all the developments in the United States regarding UFOs in the years from 2021 through 2023. If you want more details about Soviet, Russian, and post-Soviet UFO research, and also research in the periods of ancient Russia, Russian Empire, and so forth, you can find them in my books and also lectures and videos on this channel. But I really want you to hear what the colonel had to say. I think it's fascinating in a way. And I will add very few comments, only where I have to. And I will probably shorten a little bit his presentation. But what I put together, I think you will find most fascinating, like I said. Strategic weapons controlled by UFOs. There are cases when, under the influence of UFOs hovering over the positions of strategic missile forces, there was a strong magnetization of the missile guidance heads, which negatively affected their accuracy, as a result of which it was necessary to remove individual missile units from the combat duty. Interesting information about this was reported by retired Colonel Sokolov, who worked for 10 years in the Applied Problems Section, a closed unit at the junction of the Ministry of Defense and the Academy of Sciences, and had access to important classified information. According to Sokolov, in 1983, he had to participate in the investigation of an incident with a UFO hovering near one of the bases of intercontinental ballistic missiles in Ukraine. The object was located near the base for 4 hours, and all this time light bulbs were lit on its main control panel, and the launch program was turned on in an incomprehensible way. Fortunately, none of the rockets took off. UFOs also affect internal combustion engines, radio communications, and electrical equipment. In 1982, during the large exercises of the Pacific Fleet in the Kamchatka region, radio communication between the ships and the coast was completely interrupted for half an hour when a UFO was observed flying from several ships. It was observed. And in 1988, with the appearance of a huge UFO, 36 symmetrically located lights near the aircraft carrier, that's what the UFO had, located near the island of Shikotan, the ship's diesel engines immediately stopped on the Novorossiysk. All electronic systems were de-energized, and even the portable batteries of the radio station stopped working. After 15 minutes, the object flew away, and everything worked again. Repeated UFO flights have been observed in the Soviet Union, not only missile positions, but also over the cosmodromes, spaceports, nuclear submarine bases, military airfields, and missile ranges. UFOs were repeatedly observed over the Baikonur, and in 1962 a UFO was observed there by Sergei Korolev. In 1975, a UFO hung over the launch pad before the unsuccessful launch of the Soyuz 18-1 spacecraft. In 1990, an unknown object hovered over the launch system for 10 days every day, on which the Energia rocket and the Buran reusable spacecraft were located. So 10 days right at the start of the operations of the Energia rocket and the Buran reusable spacecraft. This is how I understand it, but the objects were there all the time for 10 days. In 1989, a huge UFO landed near the MK station north of the Plesetsk Cosmodrome. And in 1992, after photographing the Soyuz rocket with the Resource 500 spacecraft at this cosmodrome, two unknown objects in the form of washers, that's how it's translated, hanging on both sides of the rocket were found in the developed images. And in the picture taken 20 minutes later, a large gray sphere was visible to the left of the rocket. All of them were not visually observed. According to the former chief of the flotilla intelligence, captain of the first rank Berezhny, in the period from October 1979 to April 1980, disc-shaped UFOs appeared almost every week and hovered over the base of nuclear submarines in the Western Litsa Bay. Complex UFO maneuvers were recorded over military airfields south of Barnaul, north of Roslavl, etc. Colonel General Sapkov described how he and a group of officers and weapon designers in 1979 and 1986 observed an elliptic UFO at the Kapustin Yar missile range, hovering over the launch pad for an hour before the test launches of missiles. And the officers told him that such objects are often observed there. UFOs also appear during some test launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. Pilot cosmonaut Serebrov said that he knows for sure from unofficial KGB sources, as soon as they declare an area of the ocean close to navigation due to the possible hit of the warheads of the launched ballistic missiles, not only American ships appear there, but also unidentified flying objects. Over the Hungarian airfield, where Soviet fighter aviation regiment was based, a UFO hovered in the form of a sphere with a diameter of about 800 meters. Flights were stopped, and a fighter jet from a neighboring airfield was raised to intercept it. But the UFO, with the approach of the airplane instantly, at the speed of about 10,000 kilometers per hour, ascended to height or altitude of 30 kilometers, inaccessible for the aircraft. In 1978, on Baikonur, sentries discovered an unknown glowing object hovering over one of the buildings. The guard was the guys the guard raised an alarm, basically open your weapons, and he opened the fire on the object. In response to this, the UFO made it so that the illumination at the airport completely turned off and all means of communication stopped working. In 1967, 2 Cuban MiG-21 fighters were sent to intercept an unknown spherical object approaching the island and were ordered to shoot it down, but the radars and missiles became out of order. Then the pilot of the second airplane reported that the leading aircraft exploded, but without flame and smoke. There are also cases when fighter jets sent to intercept UFOs disappeared without a trace when encountering the object. This usually happened as follows. On the radar screens, it was visible how the mark from the aircraft merged with the mark from the UFO, after which the general mark either disappeared or was removed at high speed, and no traces of the aircraft were found. For example, in 1992, in the Far East, a mark from the newest Su-27 fighter jet that was in the air suddenly disappeared on radar screens, and the Air Defense Headquarters drew attention to the fact that an unidentified flying object was in the area at the time of the aircraft's disappearance. Intensive search of the Su-27 by aircraft, helicopters, and ground search teams conducted over a month were unsuccessful. The issue of intercepting UFOs in the American Air Force has been solved in different ways over the years. At first, there was an order to shoot down UFOs, then to open fire only with the hostile actions on their part, and even later to be vigilant but not to use extreme measures. In the Soviet Armed Forces, pilots were initially also ordered to chase UFOs and shoot them down. At the same time, in 3 cases, the fighter jets crashed and 1 pilot was killed. After that time, the pilots received an order to change course and avoid contact when encountering UFOs. It should also be noted that in a number of countries it has long been prohibited not only to open fire on UFOs from any kind of weapons, but also to irradiate them. That's very interesting. But also to irradiate them from with an anti-aircraft missile guidance stations, as well as to perform maneuvers towards objects that can be regarded as attacking. What is known about how Soviet Ministry of Defense deals with unidentified flying objects, and I take it he also meant the Russian one, because he said our. A wide collection of data on UFO sightings in Soviet and Russian armed forces has been organized only since 1980. One of the leading rocket specialists, Colonel General Maximov, wrote in 1990, that's during the Soviet times, in the Red Star newspaper that a special directive was sent to military units at that time, according to which all UFO sightings had to be reported to the head institutes. That there was special institutes that collected information, which were defined in all types of armed forces. The directive was accompanied by methodological instructions on the organization of observations of anomalous phenomena and objects, as UFOs were called at the time, and their impact on the environment, living organisms, and technical means. The UFO study program at the Ministry of Defense received conditional name as Setka MO, then Galaxy MO, and finally Horizon. I'm translating into English, except Setka should be translated as either net or grid, and was made secret, and therefore they had very limited information on this issue. Colonel was referring to himself and his colleagues. At the UFO symposium in the United States in the summer of 1994, it was reported about the research work in Russia on the topic of Nitka 3 or Thread 3 under the rather complicated title Substantiation of the Concept and Forecast of the Expected Results of Experimental and Theoretical Studies of the Functioning of Unconventional Engines and their interaction with the environment. That's exactly what the UFO research conducted in the military unit 73790 was called, purely scientifically. Here in 1991, this report was compiled in a volume of several dozen pages. The materials of the symposium published in the United States contained a summary of this report and a photocopy of its title page with the signatures of the relevant officials. The report describes the history of UFO research in the USSR and the USA, contains detailed information about the classification of this problem in America, in particular about Operation Majestic 12, which describes UFO crashes in 1947 near Roswell and in 1950 near U.S. border with Mexico. There are also references to UFO encounters of American and Russian cosmonauts. Regarding the numerous encounters of aircraft with UFOs, it is said that their description would take several volumes. The report states that the main task of the Thread 3 program was to conduct extensive research in order to discover new principles of unconventional engines and their accompanying fields, and to understand how such a technology has been developed and how technological advantages can be derived from this fact. At the same time, it is emphasized that among the UFO sightings, there are many that cannot be explained because in them we may encounter aliens from other planets or from parallel worlds. After reports in the media about the UFO wrecks available to the American authorities, we had rumors that our, meaning Soviet, Ministry of Defense allegedly also has whole entire UFO and their fragments, which are kept secret in hangars and are being investigated with the involvement of major scientists. When asked whether such rumors correspond to reality, the deputy head of the state legal department under the president of Russia, so this is now modern Russia, in charge of security and defense issues, Katinkov, in 1992, said that he had not heard of certain objects being stored and studied somewhere. Colonel Sokolov also stated that he had never come across a physical evidence of the existence of UFOs. So let me add some more comments. First of all, this information, I take it to Colonel Kolchin as the author, although others used it as well and put their names under it. I won't go into that. The incident here refers to in Ukraine that Sokolov investigated officially and others from the Setka program. I've done a lot of research and I have a video about this incident and I'll put a link to it. I've written about it and there are people that somehow still investigated former Soviet military personnel who had observed this huge UFO at the time. You will see it in my video if you are interested. When he refers to Korolev, that's the father of the Soviet space research, I should say, and military engineer who suffered greatly under the Stalinist times and died young, but because of him, space exploration took off, in my opinion, in the Soviet Union, and not only in my opinion. As for Colonel Sokolov, he changed drastically his opinion and his views in 2000. I think he was forced to. And he started negating what he said before. But that's, again, ufology is a minefield, and it's not a safe area to investigate, especially for people close to the centers of power. So this is what I wanted to present to you. It's a very interesting piece of the history of Soviet and some period of the Russian Federation's research of UFOs. Today, there are new developments, and you can see them in my videos. Colonel Kolchin was very detailed, very dedicated in his work, and his books are fascinating even after basically decades that have passed. So I trust you will find my video here interesting and keep it in perspective as you hear recent reports from the United States and other parts of the world. And I'm sure in the near future we'll find out more, or there will be more secrecy on this subject. Thank you for your attention to my work. I'll bring you more interesting videos on the history of ufology in Russia, former Soviet Union, modern post-Soviet countries, and China to the extent possible. Please subscribe to my channel, please like my videos, and tell others about my work.